The Cyclones tailgate tour started this week, and Matt Campbell and Otzelberger had some interesting things to say, but boy, was Jamie Pollard swinging the hot bat. You are not going to want to miss today's episode of Locked On Cyclones.
You are Locked On Cyclones, your daily podcast on the Iowa State Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Shout out to you for being here every single day and making this your first watch or listen of the day. I appreciate it more than you know. Whether you're watching on YouTube or listening on your favorite podcasting platform, be sure to hit subscribe so we can prove once and for all that it is, in fact, a Cyclone state. Speaking of the Cyclone state, the Cyclone State Tour, I suppose, is what you could call it, has been going on this week. And in Ankeny, I got some snippets of some interviews of Otzelberger, Campbell, and Pollard. We'll talk about, obviously, what's coming up for not only basketball and football, but we are going to talk about what Jamie Pollard had to say. He had comments all across the board. You know, he's going to field a ton of different questions just because of the nature of his position. But he said some really interesting things in there as well. I can't wait to get all of that in and more. But first, today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can get $200 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. Now, this Cyclones tailgate tour, very cool event where a bunch of, obviously Jamie Pollard, but a lot of coaches come around the state. If you're listening in Sioux City, they'll be at the Tyson Event Center at noon, from noon to 1. And if you're listening in Council Bluffs, they'll be at the Mid-America Center, Convention Center, from 6 to 8 today. So just be aware of that if you're listening before that point in the day. But nonetheless, in Ankeny, these guys all got in front of some cameras, got in front of some microphones, answered some questions. And Jamie Pollard, right now, the position he's in, very tough position, okay? I'm not going to lie, but always has something to say, I feel like. And so we're going to break that down first here. The first thing that kind of came right at him was like, where is Iowa State at? Because it felt like there was a lot of conversation of, well, Iowa State's cooked. We are done for. It was nice knowing you. That's not what he said, though. He did say, quote, short term, we're there. We're set up and we're ready to go because we're operating like it's going to happen. Quote. Now, what he's talking about there is mostly the roster limits. But he, in general, is kind of just speaking to the situation at hand, notably, obviously, the $20.5 or $20 million that he keeps calling it number with the reserve that Iowa State has. Iowa State's going to be just fine. Something I've talked about before. I am not too concerned. I am very happy to see that he feels the same way. There are, obviously some quotes he said later. They kind of circled back. The Board of Regents, he said they have to acknowledge that the 2011 policy can't exist anymore. If you're not putting any institutional money into athletics, what are we really saying? I don't want to go that far and kind of go at the whole state here, but I do think that what he's getting at here is that times have changed. The last 20 years, it wasn't really that concerning for a state of Iowa school. Okay, I'm not going to say, Iowa State specifically, or UNI, or the University of Iowa. It's just state of Iowa schools to be putting money into athletics because it's not what it is now. And I think that's fair to at least say that things are different now and there might be a different set of demands at hand, right? And he did say, like, if it was an easy decision, it would have been made already. So there's obviously things that have to be considered, and what does this mean, and what are we putting value into? But he kind of pointed at, how important athletics is to the state of Iowa, to central Iowa. And I think that's legit. Personally, I love athletics. I'm sure you do as well here as you're listening to this podcast. But to kind of pivot away from that, I'm sure we are all aware that President Wendy Winterstein is retiring. Shout out, Wendy Winterstein. Great run. We are talking an historic run from Wendy Winterstein. Kind of asked about that. Gave a little bit of a long quote here. I thought this was worth mentioning. He doesn't have I don't think he has a say in who Iowa State picks as the next president, but we all know how kind of sports centric Wendy Winterstein was. So when asked about the situation, Jamie Pollard said that, quote, athletics is a big part of the university, and the world we're working in today makes that even more of an issue. So whoever gets hired is going to have to be versed or understand or quickly get brought up to speed on the landscape going forward, because it's an Iowa State challenge for Iowa State athletics to stay at this level. It isn't just an athletics department challenge. Now, you could draw a lot of things from this. I do wonder if he kind of is looking at, if there were to be a revision of this 2011 policy by the Board of Regents, where now Iowa State University can put money into athletics. Like, it'd be great if we have a president that could, kind of side on the side of athletics here a little bit. Now, you don't want to get too crazy. I don't know how I would feel if I were a freshman coming in and I had a $500 fee to give to the athletes. Like, I understand that would be, maybe that's too far, but there are options. And even outside of that avenue specifically, I think it's always good to have, an athletic kind of focus, not necessarily focus, but definitely mindful. Is that the word? President. I think that's super cool. Try to fire through a couple of these here. Bringing the high school basketball championships to Hilton. Very interesting wrinkle here. I did not know this. Maybe I just missed this. The High School Athletic Association reached out to Iowa State. Woo! Feels like a huge win right there. I was super pumped to hear that. It's just acknowledgement of how great Iowa State is, of just how much Iowa State has to offer. And yes, like the Chi-Town thing played a large role in this, I do think, but that's only proving kind of just what I've been harping on about Chi-Town as far as like recruiting and all of that. And Pollard mentioned that as well, that Campbell had said that, and he does think that that's going to be a big thing moving forward. We'll come back to that in a second here, but he mentioned like all the fans coming to town, specifically, not so much the athletes, which I would have liked to see more endorsement for the athletes coming to town, getting to play in Hilton. You get to see what that's like, this high level competition. I want to continue my, education in athletic career at Iowa State, as opposed to, I don't think you can continue education at the Wells Fargo Arena. I don't think you can, but maybe I'm incorrect there. Nonetheless, I thought that was, worth mentioning. He liked the fans coming to town just to show how great the environment is. I pointed that out right away when that news broke. And he said that we can grow the tournament in ways differently because it is on a college campus. I think it could be absolutely electric. Now, back to Chi-Town. There were some questions about Chi-Town, and he wanted to clarify right away. Like, immediately said that Chi-Town is not the athletics department, okay? The revenue does not come into the athletics department, and from what I understand, they're not putting money into this. Okay, so it's not like Iowa State is pouring all this money into Chi-Town and not giving it to athletes. It sounds like they're completely separate, and it sounds like, from what I gathered from what Pollard said, it's not even really a part of the university. Now, are they linked though? Yes, in the way of, this is going to be huge for recruiting. As I mentioned, this is going to be huge for bringing fans. It's right between Hilton and Jack Trice. It's not up yet, but it is in the works. He kind of assimilated it to a duck swimming in water, which was interesting. But I get it. The feet are paddling. Doesn't really look like much is going on, but things are certainly happening. You get a tailgate for football games. Chi-Town's right there, right after the game. It's going to be right there. Basketball, kind of the same deal. A little colder, definitely a little colder, but kind of the same idea there. And so I thought that was worth mentioning, because I could see people being like, we're pouring all this money into this major project right before this whole deal. Like, they are not the same, not connected. Thought that was at least worth mentioning. But I do think that they will be, they'll be like tied, but not like correlated. Does that make sense? They are going to be kind of like, they will affect each other, but they are not actually funding each other, really, is what it comes down to. So at least worth mentioning there. Now let's dive into actual sports. Okay, we got basketball, we got football coming down the pipe. Don't go anywhere. We're coming right back right after this. The NBA playoffs are in full swing, and every night delivers highlight-worthy performances, major momentum shifts, and can't-miss moments, whether it's a game-winning shot or a breakout player. There's never been a better time to get in on the action. FanDuel makes it easy to stay in the game before tip-off and live. With player props, performance trends, and same-game parlays, fans have more ways than ever to play smart and win big. What I say yesterday, guys, Halliburton and the Pacers get it done against the Knicks, right in the hot hand there. I mean, $5 into $200 in bonus bets. I mean, if it were me, the Pacers all day long. If you're new to FanDuel, it's the perfect time to sign up. Head to FanDuel.com and place your first $5 bet. If it wins, you will get $200 in bonus bets. Make every moment more with FanDuel, official sports betting partner of the NBA. So the Cyclones tailgate tour is going on. We talked about Pollard. Always going to have interesting things to say, always in a bit of an interesting position, so I don't blame him. But let's transition to some basketball here at Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Otzelberger had a lot to say. I'm not going to lie to you. I got a whole list of things here, some great questions thrown his way. He fielded them really, really well. It's been a while since we've heard an Otzelberger press conference, and it's always nice to kind of hear that kind of coach speak, if you will, come right back into my ears, because and your ears too. I mean, shoot, I don't know if you enjoy press conferences, but I have come to enjoy them more and more over the last 10 years or whatever, just because you get a deeper insight into the team. And so Otzelberger, you know how he speaks. I mean, it didn't change. It was amazing. And one of the first things he kind of pointed to was obviously the guys not graduating, but finishing final exams. Looks like they're going to be back around the 14th, start practice on the 16th, whatever, about a month away from getting things really moving. But to Taman, he said he's healthy. He's been great, totally healthy. Can't put a number on it. Like you said, can't say he's 100%, 80, whatever. Can't put really a number on it, but it feels great. And of course, Otzelberger is excited to have him back and playing at full strength. Now, of course, who wouldn't be? Because Taman is, in my opinion, kind of the heartbeat of this Cyclones team, or at least he was last year. Well, I guess we haven't yet to see for this upcoming year. I don't know if everyone agrees with me on that one, just because obviously we don't see the box score production and things of that nature. But I think as far as effort goes, as far as what they call those Taman plays, I think it's really invaluable. You can't put a number to it, just like Otz can't put a number to his kind of health status. Like you can't really value that. It's just like in value. It's like too much value, in my opinion. So that's always good to hear. I would be curious to see where he's at the end of the season last year, because, Taman wasn't the only one. Obviously, Keyshawn Gilbert in his situation, Joshua Jefferson, Otzelberger kind of mentioned in one of his answers, just guys that they were kind of banged up, but feels pretty good about where they're at right now. It sounds like, other than maybe Jefferson kind of taking some time to really heal up before this season, I think that's a great spot to be in. I will say this was a great stat from, I believe he wasn't on camera, but it sounded like Alec Bussey was on the show a while ago now. He said that I believe Iowa State is the only Big 12 school to have 50% of scoring and 47% of, I believe, minutes is what he said, is what I have written down here, returning from last year. And what does that mean? And so, that's always going to be good. That's a pretty solid number, especially in today's day and age. And Otzelberger said, you want to have returning production or retention, but you also want to have a whole new team. But he went on to say that, like, having Joshua Taman, Milan, Nate Heisey, Cade Kellerman, all these guys coming back, that allows this team to hit the ground running going into this year. You're not coming back with a whole fresh new roster. Yes, you have transfers and freshmen and everything, but you've got a little bit of a core that can kind of be that guiding light of, like, this is what Iowa State basketball is. Okay, let's not get it twisted. That's what we're doing here. So that's exciting. That is, I thought, a really good, obviously the stat, wild. That's a good stat. But as far as like the answer from Otzelberger, I thought was also very exciting there. Then he went on to kind of talk a little bit about this, the transfer class, I guess, if you will, that's coming in here. Buchanan and Mulder, he broke down first, said like they both have great feet, change in speed of direction, change of speed and direction, excuse me. The pick and roll defense, they want that speed, so very solid there. Obviously, something they were looking for, the assist to turnover type of guys, like I just mentioned. Halliburton, kind of unbelievable in that and as well. He did say Mulder was the best in Ken Palm was the most efficient in the nation. So that's obviously worth mentioning. I think Mulder was a name that people were pretty excited about. But Buchanan is a very gifted passer and lob threat as well. And then he threw this in here at the end. He said, hey, bunch of tremendous effort guys. Effort-based guys is what he said. But I went to effort guys because I was called the effort guy on my basketball team way back in the day, not even in high school yet. But I was the kid that couldn't make a shot. But if we were running killers, I mean, we were running killers. We weren't jogging them. Okay. So it's exciting to see that is something they look for in this team. Cause I think that's what sets this team apart at times for sure is just the effort, like the Taman plays, diving for the ball. I believe, Curtis Jones was involved with, I can see the play. I just can't remember who it was that was diving for that ball. Nonetheless, effort comes to mind. Defense comes to mind when you think of Iowa State basketball. Then talked about Mason Williams and Dominic Nelson. Mason Williams, a guy that I am so excited to see what happens. I just watching his tape feel very good about this guy. Basically Ott said, taller, longer guards with a lot of upside. Dominic is downhill playmaker, gets the foul line like crazy just as much as anybody and is very dangerous in transition. I feel like that's a guy that Iowa State really could use. Transition, a place where Iowa State has excelled in recent years for sure, but getting to the foul line and hitting those shots could be huge for Iowa State. Really pretty solid down the stretch as far as free throws goes. I thought that was a big deal in a lot of games. Nonetheless, Williams, a guy who can make plays off the bounce and hit shots. He's a guy who has a lot of upside and can develop. And that's what he's looking for in these guys is guys who have upside and guys who want to develop. Also went on to say that, they want guys who have that work ethic, that character every single day, and they have to want to be here at Iowa State. Went on to say, those daily habits, like they're not for everybody. And so bringing in guys that's important to them. It's what matters. I think that's, you go and get guys that fit the program, especially here at Iowa State. I think that was a great play. Also, when, kind of talked a little bit about the guys coming in, what are they looking for? Like I just said, a couple of those things. But as far as like on the actual court, the guys that had more ability than what they accomplished when they talked to these guys, they're like, hey, I felt like I could have done more. Maybe it was the situation they were in. Maybe it was a coach. Maybe it was an injury, whatever it might be. Those guys have treated Iowa State very well. Curtis Jones, a name that automatically is just going to come up every single time because of the transition he made. But that chip on the shoulder coming from those kind of not as great of situations is how I'll put it, because Iowa State is the best situation. So it would make everyone else, slightly down the line there. That chip on the shoulder is quote, always going to be something we look for and we think it's important, quote. So I think that's great. I think it really is, especially in basketball. Now, like I just mentioned, I didn't play basketball at a high level, but I think having the chip on your shoulder anywhere in life or in sport especially is a weapon. It is an absolute weapon. But on the basketball court, I feel like it really transitions. And maybe it's because of how many times each player touches the ball. Maybe it's because of the way that the game is played. Nonetheless, I do feel like it really transfers over. And then he did talk about really quickly, I want to get into kind of their non-conference. Said he wants to have these non-conference, non-league strength of schedule games that give them a chance to get some quality wins, learn about their team. And we'll talk about this more in the coming days or weeks. But their tournament, last year, the Maui Invitational, we all remember that. But this Players Era tournament, very exciting for the Cyclones. Really great competition there. We'll break that down at some point. I don't have time right now. But he does think that the recent success has contributed to great non-conference schedules, Mississippi State, Purdue, in this next coming year. And so he said, and that's exciting. That I think that's a great sign of like where Iowa State's at, that we're picking up these great non-conference games, because at the end of the day, it matters to the other team too. They got to get something out of it at some point. Now let's pivot away from basketball and onto the gridiron. As you all know, Farmageddon's coming up. It's coming quick. So we're going to talk about that, the football team, coming up right after this. basketball seems to be poised for an electric year based on what I'm seeing, based on what I've heard from Otzelberger. But football. If you've been following us here at Locked On Cyclones, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. By the way, it's free to subscribe, and you prove it's a Cyclone state. You help me with that. You know, over the last few days, Christian Rao of Locked On Kansas State and I have broken down in depth the Farmageddon game, and we'll do it again as we get through fall camp and we get more news and this, that, and the other thing. It was a lot of fun. And if you listened, you could probably tell when I talked about Iowa State, I spoke very, very highly of the Cyclones. I am very excited about this team coming up. I mean, who knows what they're going to be capable of, but I have their floor at like maybe 8 wins and their ceiling probably closer to at least, I would say, 10. I think a repeat 10-win season, obviously last year had 10 in the regular and then 11, including the Pop-Tart Bowl. I think that would be electric. I think it's very, very doable, very possible. Very excited about it. Now, Matt Campbell had some things to say, some questions to answer, and let's just kind of run through them here. The first thing, obviously, coming out of spring ball, gonna get that question again whenever he's in front of the media. Like, what's the deal? How are we feeling about spring ball? He said, I feel like we got exactly what we needed to get out of spring ball. Got some meaningful reps. We didn't back down, and most importantly, from what I got, the great vision of where we are. Now, what does that mean? What does that mean? Is that good? Is that bad? What's the angle here? What are we looking at? I think that this is actually a good thing. He didn't say anything about anyone. It's just always good to know where you're at. I believe the term is metacognition is the term. It's like knowing what you know, knowing what you don't know, I believe that's how I approached it. Basically every exam was, what do I do not know? What do I not? Wow, I don't know how to speak. What do I not know? And let's learn that. I don't need to relearn the stuff I know. So for Iowa State, what do we know? Where are we? Okay, we are here. Now we can work from this. This is what we know. We can work on this. That's almost the exact opposite analogy I just gave. But for football, it makes a lot more sense. And it's a lot more exciting for them to know, okay, tight end room looking like this, linebacker room looking like this. Maybe, defensive line. Okay, we're here. Safeties. Okay. Quarterback, of course. All right. We've seen this from him. I think that gives them an idea of, going into summer and the training, obviously the strength conditioning program, all of that. And then going into fall camp, it gives these coaches a great spot to be in. And I thought that's every team, every single year. Nonetheless, I just thought that was worth kind of mentioning that he threw that out there. Like, that's an acknowledgement of, look, we know where we're at. We know where we can get better. We know where we're already good. We know where we can focus going into the summer, into the fall. And obviously the fall is the most exciting portion of this, but the summer, right? Where are we at right now? Like kind of this spring transition into summer. Campbell said, like, as far as guys that were kind of day to day coming out of the spring, we're trending on almost getting to almost like that 100% mark. Getting into June, which is the summer, I think. Very excited to have a full team back, he said. I couldn't agree anymore, but I did think this was interesting. He said, get some of those guys back out on the practice field, not necessarily in the games. Very important point. I think a lot of people forget. That these super high-end players that we all talk about, they practice too, right? And so they they are out there getting better every day, but they're also making the rest of the team better every single day. I think that's an important thing just to at least mention, right? Like, let's just remember that it's a huge exponential function. This whole thing compounds to where the more great players you have in the games, yes, you're going to be better. But then after that game, who's out on the practice field? All of those great players. Okay, well, everyone's probably going to be a little bit better than if they weren't out there. I think that was at least kind of worth mentioning because I do think a lot of people forget about that. And then talking about Farmageddon as we transition, I guess, let's go linearly from summer into the fall. He said, like, the week 0 game it's been a challenge for Campbell himself. He was like, this has been a challenge for me and the staff as a whole, just like, what very good leaders and teachers, like, what are we going to do as far as like all of that goes? And Campbell talked about reaching out to some NFL teams, and we'll dive into more of that. But as far as like, what did you guys do when you went over? What went well? What didn't? What would you have done differently? Especially because Iowa State is first time First time for the Cyclones. And you're going to want to get that win. Like we talked about it yesterday, just how important this win is. Not the end of the world if you lose, but certainly a very important game. And so getting everything ready right off the bat, I think is a great play by Campbell. Obviously has NFL connections. I mean, of course, as one of the greatest coaches in college football, he's going to have some connections there. But he also pointed out that it's not just getting over the pond, not just jumping over the pond and playing a tough game. It's also coming back. And you are like coming back from a huge event in Dublin, Ireland, and now you gotta play 3 games. There are non-conference games, but you gotta boom, boom, boom. Like, could be tough. And so that's why he reached out to those NFL teams to kind of see what they did. What could Iowa State model? How does this like work with our team? What can we maybe do differently? What would work better? I love where that headspace is at. And then we kind of got into some roster limits stuff. And I, we all talked about the Matt Campbell presser where he just went off, because how could you not? I mean, it just never happens. It was electric. I was fired up just sitting here. And the reason he was so fired up was because it felt to him like it was very unfair, not only to him and his team, but to the players to, have guys that transferred or walk on or whatever the case is, freshmen that committed. And then Iowa State has to be like, well, your spot's not going to exist anymore. I apologize. But that's kind of, it is what it is. And we saw guys transfer out. We really did. And Campbell mentioned again here that like those guys got great opportunities, and really the whole front office celebrated that. Like, that's exciting. That's what this whole program is about, is developing players and putting everyone in the best position that they can. I mean, look at Brock Purdy, right? Pretty good position to be in now. And so that's exciting. And we'll get into that in a second. But another thing that actually, that kind of recent-ish news was that there might be this new grace period. Remember, we talked about this, where there is it's not passed yet, but there's an option potentially that's being proposed for schools to decide if they will bring back players that they told, like, your spot's not going to exist, as opposed to making it automatic or mandatory. They're going to potentially make it like an option for these schools. And so when asked about it, Campbell said, I think this makes a lot more sense. It is kind of crazy that, we're 3 months away and we still don't know exactly what's going on. We don't have definitive rules. That does kind of stink. But he said, like, this makes a lot more sense. And he said this was a huge win for our locker room, which to me immediately feels like a throwaway comment to maybe some, but to me, very tight-knit locker room. I love where that's at, right? These guys care about each other. That's exciting. He said, like, we got a really strong roster. Now, talking about those guys, there were some that we saw leave Iowa State and go and get scholarships elsewhere, which is exciting for them and their families and all of this. But I was surprised to hear him say that a majority of guys that Campbell had those conversations with in January and February and such, they decided to stick around and try to fight on our roster. Boy, that's a comment to unpack. We will unpack that further tomorrow. But before we do, he said, like, a couple of guys left and got scholarships. Yes, but a majority of them stuck around, which I was shocked. I was shocked to hear that. I really was, because you only hear of the success stories. I just assumed that there was a lot of other guys that I didn't hear about. No, they decided to stick around, just like you did to the end of this episode. Shout out to you. Obviously, if you haven't hit subscribe down below, it's free. We're proving it's a Cyclone State. I appreciate it more than you know. Come back tomorrow. Excuse me. We're going to talk about this football deal. This is and more. This is an exciting time. I cannot wait to do it and to have you here along with me. Until next time, Cyclone fans, sayonara.